know for many years that have known you, you have been one of the strong advocates and champions of Sustainable Development Goals and the environment and various issues related to it. In your journey, firstly, what motivated you to do that, and what are some of the surprise truths that you would like people to know about this whole area, which is now becoming so important and center stage?
Yeah. So first of all, I come from a family that love water, right? And we have a island that we go to, and since I was very young, we love water activities. We love the marine, and that's how my first exposure to what we call the environment is more through the water, through sea, water. Of course, then comes many, when we look at the marine conservation and things like that, it really brings a completely different view of how the world is, right? And I started actually my first exposure also to a conservation organization was WWF. I started very young. I think I was the first board member in WWF in my early 30 at that time.
Okay.
And that's where I started to get engaged more on sustainability from the marine, but also on other areas. And I think as a conservation organization, we're able to see also get exposed on projects and so forth on how Indonesia, with such a large natural base, richness on what we do, and so that's kind of linking also to the community of environmentalists, and also people that are really concerned about the environment and so forth. At that time, there was not yet much about SDG per se that I was involved with, so it's more from the environment perspective. And I think actually Indonesia has always looked at this subject for a long time, but I think it's more the NGOs, people that are more in that level.
Yeah, that's
I think it was the time that I remember during the SBY, the President SBY time, when we talk about sustainable development goals. So it was moving from MDG to SDG at that time. I think the president was one of the high panel on SDG in the UN, and I think that was Indonesia suddenly start opening door of how to bring in more the SDG aspect.
Yes.
So SDG, as you know, sustainable development, it beyond just one part of the environment,
yes,
right? And I think with the 17 goals, it's very clear how Indonesia, can really move forward, and how we develop the action plan and so forth, and reaching the target and so forth. Then of course come with the net zero targets. We want to reach net zero before 2060. Indonesia start encompassing. So right now, I think with the roadmap that Indonesia have on sustainable development, I think it's clear that everybody, government, wants to reach this objective. But I think the role that we need to play, when we talk about sustainability, is a very large fast that we have to unlock, right? So first of all, I think we need to be clear in our roadmap. What are the areas of sustainability today that we want to basically unleash, and that it's like the quick wins that we want to put in. So we started, I think the first is with the roadmap of sustainability, right? For us, for business. I think in many times what the government wants to achieve with their NDC and so forth has to be converted in how business will support to achieving that target, because government can't achieve it alone,
yes,
right? It has to be supported by the business, and this is why we start developing also the pillar. Of course, we have the follow energy, we have the industry, we have the waste. We have so we in each of the area we start developing on how actually. If you want to reduce the GHG, how do you kind of capture in terms of the measurement, right?
Yeah.
Then we start developing the programs. For example, we have 7 areas that we are now focusing on the nature-based solutions. We have the energy transition, and we want to retire coal early. Indonesia has so much opportunities on renewable. We want to accelerate renewable, but of course the mechanism is not easy to basically doing this energy transition. Then we have the electric mobility. Of course we have the electric mobility now. Indonesia wants to be the hub. We have nickel, but then it's not from nickel going to go into electric vehicle and then to batteries, and so this is not something that is just overnight that can happen, right?
Correct.
So all that we need in each of these, we are making specific pathways and programs.
Yes.
And also we talk about sustainable agriculture, forestry. This is huge for Indonesia.
Yes.
We are the big palm oil producer. How can right now global demand are already and certain standards and so forth. If we want to go into those markets, we need to follow the rules. So I think those things are also a big part of Indonesia, and how we want to be in one aspect to bring sustainability in all the components of the sectors, and how we can then become a global player as well, right?
Sure.
And of course, waste management, we talk about circular economy, that's a big part. I mean, major problem in Indonesia is waste.
Correct.
So Sachin, you look at sustainability, it's a big scheme.
Yeah.
The way I look at it now from our side, right, it's like you want to promote this, and this I've been talking about this every day, about sustainability, about but the how to in the implementation is not as simple as what you want to achieve.
Yeah.
So I always say, when I want to do something and champion something, I have to start with my own, right?
Correct.
With my own organization. What do I do, right? So for example, now in our group in Syntesa, we call Syntesa for the Earth. So we have a roadmap into the goal of sustainable excellence, because our vision of the company is to become sustainable excellent.
Yeah.
It's not longer about profit, but it's also about people, planet. And this has to be embedded as a compass for our whole organization. We have 16 subsidiaries. So this has to go both on investment level and operational level. So now the roadmap, Syntesa of the Earth, is embedded into the business model of our organization, and actually also on the operational side. For example, we have specific SDG target, SDG goals that we go into the operation. Even the simplest as number 5, the gender equality, which is something that I'm very much promoting.
Yes.
How do we put gender equality in the workplace? That's part of the whole SDG in general. So when we talk about sustainability, this is a whole lot, right? It's not just about saving the environment where people are looking at. It's much beyond, how we can really have a more sustainable future is to embed a lot of this area on the SDG goal into what we do in our business. And I think the concept of CSR is no longer there.
It's an old
Let's
concept.
not talk about CSR, right? It's an old concept. We need to embed this into our business model. I think that's the key of the element, how businesses can move forward.
Yeah.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the ASEAN Economic Forum and this circular economy and sustainable development session that we are conducting today with a focus on discussion on the ASEAN strategy. So we have an esteemed panel today from the public sector, from the civic bodies, and from the private sector here. So it's a very balanced sort of a panel. And before I deep dive into the discussion, I'd like to share with you a very interesting video that was shared by Shaifu yesterday. Sarah, could you help me play that video, please?
The saying goes, when a whale falls, everything grows. So what exactly is a whale fall? It turns out that whales are born with a special ability to sense their own death in advance. When a whale receives a notice of death, it will quietly leave the colony. Swimming alone to a quiet sea? What's it doing here? Waiting to die? Not really. It's here to perform the most romantic of death rituals. When everything is ready, the whale will use its last strength to jump up on the surface of the sea. It must look good and have a good posture. Then it falls back to the surface, starting the whale fall. At the moment when the whale makes its last impressive move and falls back into the sea, the whale closes its eyes and stops breathing. It passed away peacefully. Then the whale's body will slowly fall from the surface to the bottom of the sea. This is the whale fall. During the whale fall, the stage of life begins. Sharks and eels will be the first to notice. So when the carcass sinks, they rush in to eat it. Why don't they just grab it? Because the whale is so big. It would take months for them to eat it all together. There's no need to grab it. When the carcass hits the bottom, the crustaceans come in. They feed on the proteins and organic matter in the whale's body. They even set up camp on the carcass, eating and reproducing. They stay for 2 years until all that's left is a skeleton. At this point, it's time for the anaerobic bacteria to make their appearance. They'll burrow into the bones and break down the lipids inside, producing hydrogen sulfide that smells like rotten eggs. And that's not all. The whale's remains will eventually turn into a reef, a habitat for creatures. It's not until 100 years later that the last molecules of the whale are completely broken down. In that century, whale carcasses have provided survival and employment for at least 43 species and as many as 12,490 organisms. A veritable one whale falls and all things live.
Well, thank you for that, Sarah. So I think we just started off explaining circularity in its very basic form. For the longest time in our history, as we all know, the humans have lived harmoniously with the nature. So, you know, we've had the trees bearing the fruits using the sun energy. The humans have consumed it. Whatever's been left has gone back into the nature. It's been broken by the microorganisms. It has created the nutritions to feed the trees again and the lives that have been present, and the sun has sort of played its part. Now that has changed in the last 200 over years with the introduction of the industrial revolution, the mass production, predominantly caused by the humans. That has significantly changed the circularity. And we are now today in a linear motion where we take resources from the nature, we make it into products and services, we consume whatever we can, we throw the rest, and the rest doesn't go back into the environment. It is not recycled. What we need to understand today is that we've reached a stage where the earth that we live in has limited resources. It has finite land. So this cannot continue forever. And with the population explosion that we've had, 8 billion, we are today looking at producing some 3.5 gigatons of waste. Now, a gigaton essentially, 1 gigaton essentially is somewhere in the range of 1 billion metric tons. Now, just imagine this amount of waste. Where is it going to go? In today's terms, just for our survival and our next few generations, we already need 1.75 times the Earth's space to cater to what we have. So if we don't start planning our future now, it'll be too late. And that is why this is important to bring up the discussion of circularity, and particularly in the ASEAN spectrum or in the ASEAN needs. We are today at a population of 700 million. We consume, and I use the word consume. We consumed, we sell 2.7 million cars in ASEAN every year. We sell 120 million mobile phones. We have 15 million gadgets that are sold, PCs and notebooks that are sold. We almost sell 300 million consumer electronic devices across all the other spectrums. Now, where is all this going to go once it's been consumed? So keeping that in perspective, we should start engaging in meaningful discussions with all stakeholders so that there are actionable inputs that can be beneficial for the generations that are going to come after us. Now, before I introduce all the panelists and deep dive into the discussions, I'd like to invite Park Sachin to give his opening remarks. Thanks, Park.
Thank you, Ashish. And first of all, congratulations on putting together the Circular Economy Roundtable and the forum, which I know is coming up. I'd just like to make a very quick point here that the work that is being done by the ASEAN Economic Forum, I believe, is an important missing link in this whole conversation about actionable initiatives that are following up with policy ideas, as well as the trends towards building a sustainable world around us. Circular economy plays a very important role there. Give you a very simple example. I've been in touch with schools for the last 4 months, trying to run a program to educate schools about how they can conduct festivals. And this is basically festivals in performing arts, so music, dance, arts. And the big question that always comes up is how do they manage their waste that is created because of a festival? Because a festival is a what do you call it? A point where everybody comes together in the ecosystem, and they create activities, including the public, and they generate a lot of waste. I don't mean only food waste and the other waste, but also the decorations in the hall, in the banners they put up, the promotions they do in the parking lot, the signage they put, etc. All of this, when the minute the festival is over, it has to be disposed of. And where does it really go? And so when I spoke to the schools, and every school had a very good reduce, reuse, and recycle orientation. And many schools actually have these bins where they can segregate their waste, etc. However, the principals told me that end of the day, the problem is when the waste guy comes to pick it up, he mixes it all together in one thing and takes it away. So we have reached the first level of reaching youth who understand what needs to be done. That's being done successfully by a lot of people. However, the second phase of actually being able to manage that and run it to its intended purpose of segregating the waste and the recycling them, etc., that infrastructure is not available everywhere. The concept exists, people know what they're doing, it's happening in pockets, but it is not being implemented at scale across the nation. And that's where the disconnect is seen. So we have an opportunity to actually make it happen. I don't see it as a problem. I see it as an opportunity. I think now there is a way for us to build scale around these kind of initiatives and have waste management companies spring up, which is, I know, very easy for small startups and entrepreneurs to set up their own waste management in their own village, in their own town, in their own cities. And there's a huge opportunity to enlist these people to come together in the purpose of building a circular economy. So I see that if we are able to reach out with what we have as collective wisdom in the room and our panelists who are joining us, it will go a long way in helping us to reach large scale and connect to the youth who actually seem to be more caring about sustainability issues than we are seeing among the adults. So the targets of the Gen Z and the millennials is a great starting point. However, we got to connect them to systems and operations that are actually achieving some of the goals that we have set for ourselves. However, this is only a small part of circular economy, right? There's many other aspects of it. And I think what is importantly is the extent to which circular economy concepts can be applied. And I think that's a surprise truth or a revealing factor for me to understand that, if you really look at it, it is a philosophical way of going forward with how we do business. And I think that will sink in when we understand how an entire ecosystem can be built around the whole concepts of circular economy. And I support what Ashish said earlier also, that we have only one planet. And that is one of the things that we need to be instilling in the youth so that when they become, the business leaders of tomorrow, they would have this instilled in them and not something new that they have to learn. So I think our outreach, which we are doing in ASEAN Economic Forum, should reach out not only to the private sector, but also to the youth. And that would be a great way to get things moving. Thank you.
Thank you, Sachin. So let me take the opportunity to introduce our esteemed panel today. So with us, we have Aloysius Virantomo Pakvira, who's the Program Development Manager, Indonesia Business Council for Sustainable Development, IBCSD. We have Jeffrey Bahar, a very dear friend, Mark Jeffrey, who is the Chief Operating Officer of Yamada Consulting and Spire. They are one of the largest consulting firms, research consulting firms based out of Japan. We have Florian Mess, who's the Project Director and Principal Advisor for GIZ, the German agency. We have Miranda Firatri, who's from our team. She's our Alliance Director. And joining us remotely, we have Jack Sim, popularly known as the Toilet Man. He is the founder of the World Toilet Organization, an agency which has now been recognized by the UN. We have Enrique Saifu Ibrahim Saleh, another old friend, who is the president of Malaysian Service Provider Confederation. He is also the ex-president and CEO of PCOM, which is the largest technology consortium association in Malaysia. Saifu has had a very interesting career. He has been a technocrat, was the country head for Cisco, led the operations for Oracle, has been a part of various IPOs, public offerings in Malaysia. He has also worked and currently continues to be involved as advisor to various ministries in Malaysia. We have Mr. Resham Gaglani, who is the CEO of Certus Software. He is a part of a distribution business as well as runs a very successful regional cybersecurity practice. So each one of us who's present today, I mean, if you can see there's a very diversified sort of a panel, will contribute to this discussion in their own ways. What I'd like to do is now, to start with, I'd like to invite Park Jeff for a quick introduction about Spire Yamada, and also maybe a question to start with that I'd like to throw at you is how can we increase awareness and understanding of circular economy concepts amongst businesses, governments, and the general public in ASEAN?
Thank you, Aziz. Jeffrey Bahar. Hi, panelists. Perhaps we're actually representing the voices of the commercial, the private sectors, as well as we do a little bit of projects for the public policies. And with that experience, I hope we can give our inputs on the topics we're discussing about the circular economy. The first topics that Ashish brought it up, it's about the increasing the awareness among the stakeholders, people in different countries about circular economy. Our view, it's actually the first step need to increase the awareness is to identify who are the key stakeholders that need to be prioritized to be the first mover and the enablers, actually. Now, you look at the Asian frameworks, there's 5 strategic priorities, and each strategic priority has different key stakeholders. SP number 1 on product and services related to circular economies, the key stakeholder will be the player, industry player, the manufacturers, as well as the actors along the value chain. If you look at number 2, it's on the trade. So then the key stakeholder will be government policy makers, Ministry of Trade. Number 3 will be technology enabler. They are actually, in many cases, are the first movers and the enabler, being the technologies side on the SP number 3. Number 4 is the financing and investment. So that involves the FI and perhaps Ministry of Finance Policy and Incentive. And the last one, SP number 5, is the energy, perhaps the Ministry of Energy Policy, power plants as a key stakeholder. Among the 5 SP, in my view, the low-hanging fruits will be the key stakeholder for SP number 1, which is the commercial, the industry player, and actor along the value chain. And the second key stakeholder to prioritize will be SP number 4, which is the financing, financial institution and investment. I think that will be the first movers and enablers to get the others key stakeholder across different ecosystem to start moving. That's our view. Ashish, back to you.
Very interesting. 5 strategic stakeholders. Yeah, and the ones to move forward, take the leap will be the commercial players and the financial institutions. Great. So at this stage, let me invite Florian to say a few words and add to what Park Jeff has said. Florian, if you could start with a brief introduction and then answer these questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes, I'm representing here GIZ, specifically the GIZ office that is based in the ASEAN Secretariat, supporting ASEAN Secretariat aligned working groups and ministerial bodies in implementing ASEAN strategies and policies in the region. And of course, in doing so, as a, let's say, public-owned enterprise by the German government, supporting the German government and partners in reaching Agenda 2030, but also adhering to Paris Agreement and other international frameworks regarding sustainable development. We are working in multiple sectors within ASEAN. So we're working in all the 3 pillars: ASEAN Economic Community, ASEAN Social Cultural Pillar, as well as the Political Security Pillar. And especially for the ASEAN Economic Community and the ASEAN Socio-Cultural Pillar, we of course see an improved emphasis on circular economic approaches, circular economic strategies, circular economic implementation action plans that need to be developed further on a regional level and then also need to be implemented on a national level. And here, as Jeffrey, I see the same stakeholders involved from our perspective. We of course have to look from a regional perspective onto the regional bodies, decision-making bodies in ASEAN that agree on certain guidelines, on certain frameworks. At the same time, as GIZ, we have the opportunity to have country offices in almost all ASEAN member states, where we also have bilateral portfolios where other projects are implemented with regard to sustainable economic development, environmental development, climate change, etc., so that we can always add on the regional agendas onto bilateral agendas and improve also the national frameworks, or at least try to harmonize or align national approaches more with regional approaches on an ASEAN level. So here, of course, the public sector is in the forefront of setting concrete policies that are also, let's say, pragmatic or practical for the private sector then to take on. And the multi-tier approach we have, or the challenge in that, is always to break it down from a regional to a national and then to a local level and include also the communities, because that is then in the end where implementation happens of circular economic frameworks and where new incentives or new inventions happen. The incentive should come from the policy level, inventions then also from the private sector. And it's a big challenge to raise the awareness. It's a big challenge to coordinate with all the players involved, because it's cross-ministerial, cross-sectoral, cross-country, cross-border. So we all know that even within the same organization, it's sometimes difficult to coordinate with what your neighbor in the other office is doing. So this is a huge challenge to streamline these processes, at the same time raise awareness, not only on ASEAN level, but even more than on a national level, because we see here that often ASEAN issues or challenges are approached by specific focal points in the countries that work with ASEAN. But beyond this, often the awareness of what ASEAN is doing is not there. So there's still a lot to do with regard to including political partners, but then also even more including private partners in form of private sector development approaches, public-private sector partnerships or others, to really raise the issue of circular economy. And then we also come back to the topic of education to see how can we bring in youth, how can we bring in adults, how do we do adult learning on new topics. We all think we know certain things, and what do we add onto our knowledge is always very selective. So here we have a huge challenge to bring all these various actors and issues together. And that's what we are trying to work on with GIZ.
Florian, thank you for that. So the 3 pillars you mentioned, economics, social and cultural, and the security. Now, I want to pick on the second pillar here, the social and cultural, and I want to bring in Jack Sim. Jack, So the social and cultural aspect of it, and I know that you've done a lot of work in social and cultural, across various countries, not just in ASEAN, but much beyond ASEAN. The question I have for you is, how can we improve the resource management practices such as waste management to support circular economy in ASEAN? And if you could answer that with a brief introduction on yourself, because I know I have not given enough justice to the introduction that I have done for you. So if you could give a little bit about what you have achieved in the last 30, 40 years that you've been working, especially in the social and cultural aspect of things, and then answer this question. Thank you.
My name is Jack Sim. I'm from Singapore. I created the World Toilet Organization because 40% of the world didn't have a toilet. And I think there's a lot of work still to be done in ASEAN. We have just worked with Prime Minister Modi to build 110 million toilet in India. And then in China, we've cleaned up all the public toilets. So we're hoping, actually planning for a World Toilet Summit in Indonesia this year, if possible. The answer to the question, I would give a very radical answer. If you look at agrarian society, we don't consume very much. And most of the thing we recycle, even the poop in the toilet is recycled into fertilizer, and then they grow the crop again, and everything is actually quite sustainable. What happened with the unsustainability is that when this Nobel Economic Prize winner, they all design all this thing called GDP, and the economic growth incentive is to ask people to accumulate as much consumption as possible to prove that they have higher quality of life. Now, if you look at animal kingdom, everything 100% recycled. There is zero waste. And if you ask why, it's because they don't have storage. Beyond their stomach, they have no fridge. They don't have warehouse. They don't have banks to store money, and they don't have money also. And the sustainability of the animal kingdom is really nice. And I think that the human sustainability, if we continue this way, no matter what we do, whether we're doing a little bit of climate change talk or cultural education or recycling with separation of rubbish and all that, I think those are not real solution. The real solution is to change the definition of success, which means that we should have a two-tier life. One is survival. That means we are able to reach basic needs, water, food, housing, sanitation, healthcare. Those are the basics. And after that, to aspire to improve the life of other people beyond ourselves. So we take care of ourselves first, then we have to, the higher recognition is that a billionaire should be one who improved the life of a billion people rather than have $1 billion. Because if we can educate and change this new fashion of recognition of success to the young people, the older ones is very hard to solve. But if we were to change the way they think, then we will also not have corruption, because why do you want to be corrupt? Your actually main reward of recognition is to help the other people. And your main reason to help the other people is that you are able to survive yourself. So I think that if we change the definition of success, then we can move away from the consumer economy, the consumption economics, because GDP is actually a very stupid way of measuring growth, because GDP means the amount of waste we generated. So I think that if we can redefine success, suddenly the mindset and the ball game change. Because what does people want? They didn't want the money or the clothes or the jackets or the Rolex watches or the Louis Vuitton handbag. They want recognition. If we give them recognition based on the amount of good they are doing to society, planet, and people, I think they will also do that. All they want is to be recognized. If we recognize them for the wrong thing, then the world can't sustain it. So the truth about environmental solution, there's only two words. It's called don't buy. If you don't buy, you don't pollute. So you buy less, you pollute less. And how do you pollute less? Is that if we redefine success as not about consumption, but about helping people. I think that will be a world that I aspire for. I think it's not easy to change, but I think young people like it this way. But if we don't do it, we also die. So anyway, we need to do it.
Jack, thanks for that. I remember a statement of yours that was made a few years ago. I can't remember whether it was 10 years ago or 5 years ago, but you said something about, I'm going to live another 10 years or 20 years. And if in those 20 years, I can improve the lives of some 20 million people, then that is what would be my achievement. And I think I remember that very clearly because it was something that was for the first time I've heard somebody saying that. Now, is that still true in your course? And are you still on the course to do that?
Yes. When I was 40 years old, I retired from my 16 companies that I founded, and then I work for free since the last 27 years. I'm now 67, and I just looking at the app on my phone, and it says I don't know. I probably can't see. It says that I have 4,718 days before I die on my 80th birthday. So I have a countdown since age of 40. I have 14,600 days before I die. Today I have only 4,718 days. So every day is lesser and every day is precious. And if every day my inferiority complex say I have to show people that I'm richer, I have a new car, I have a ostentatious, then I'm living for the consumption of the other people just to make them jealous of me. So I don't want to do that. So I think that you're all going to die, in this forum, every single one of you going to die. What do you want to do while you're still alive? To show off? No point.
Absolutely. And I think those are words of wisdom, Jack. Well, thank you so much for that. At this stage, I want to bring in Mark Veera. And Mark Veera, your comments on what Jack has said, if you can add on to that. But to add to that, there is also another question that I would like to throw to you. What role can technology and innovation play in overcoming challenges of implementing circular economy practices in ASEAN? So if you could start with a quick introduction and lead on to where Jack has left and then come to this question. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you, Asis. Good morning, everyone. My name is Vira. I'm from Indonesia Business Council for Sustainable Development, or known as IPCSD. IPCSD is a CEO-led business associations of companies operating in Indonesia that have a commitment to support sustainable development. IPCSD was formally established in 2011 after 4 years process at the Indonesia Chamber of Commerce and Industry. And then also IPCSD is the chapter of World Business Council for Sustainable Development. Okay, I would like to respond to your question, probably relate to the what is called the how the role of technology and innovation, particularly to support the acceleration of implementation of circular economy practices in ASEAN. Yeah. If I reflect on the adoption of circular economy at global level itself is still very low. I think according to the report, Global Circularity Report in the end of last year, yeah, 2023, the circular economy is just only 7.2, and it is decreased from the first report in 2018 is around 9%. And I think the problem is, I think now, like in Indonesia, we see a lot of what Pak Sasin call is actionable initiative relating to circular economy. Yeah, there are a lot of ideas or things or product that already done by many organizations, including by recycle business or companies as well. But I think the problem is we need like a big scale of these practices, and technology and innovation is, I think, that can play a role for this one. Yeah. Otherwise, like the initiative is relatively small, while when we see the problem, for example, like the issue of waste, and that need to manage, yeah, and to transform into what is more valuable products and something cannot be tackled by like manually. Yeah, so we need technology innovation that accelerate or will create what is called as a big scale or big projects relating to circular economy. If there are many projects, it means that there are more people working on that. It means if more people working, more companies producing product related to circular economy in different sector, and then also benefit to environment, yeah, like for example, in the case of waste, and then with this, the problem will decrease, will be solved, but also creating social benefit for people, in particular to increase their income, in particular for the community. So that is, I think, the role for technology and innovation to like leverage, yeah, to create project that will also will lead to the big impact, I think. Thank you.
Thank you, Pak Wira. So at this stage, I want to bring in, let me call you Pak Shaifu, because we're sitting here in Jakarta. So Shaifu, so Pak Shaifu to come in. And again, like I said to Jack, I couldn't do justification to the introduction. I think it'll be good if you could introduce the vast experience that you've had in the industry. And also address a question that I have for you today. How can we incentivize investment in research and development to advance circular economy initiatives in ASEAN? So over to you, Shaifu.
Thank you, Ashish, and hello, everybody, esteemed panel. Just in 30 seconds, quick update. I started my job with IBM in 1983. For 20 years, I was with IBM, Oracle, and then I sort of completed that round of technology company, and I was a country manager for Cisco in the year 2000. I did not look back. Moving forward, I was like on the board of a listed company. I started my own company. So I was entrepreneur, technopreneur, decided to give back to society. I become social entrepreneur. And today, I think I'm a hobbypreneur. I think, Ashish, you have seen my restaurant in the jungle. I got a few cafes. So sometimes we think through our stomach. But on a serious note, I think what Ashish has invited me, thank you, Ashish. The initiative is really good. Moving forward, I think the idea is how to look at the sustainable model. And luckily, it's a fasting month that I woke up early at 5 o'clock and I took a walk around and got myself updated on the circular economy. So, because we are living in a linear economy, like grab, produce, and dispose, as I see it. And then again, I thought, regardless whether it's a circular, hexagon, or 3-dimension, 5-dimension, it's basically how we define it. So, Ashish, don't worry. 1.7 times that we need the space on waste and all that, by that time we'll probably be living on the moon and Mars, colonize and all that. So technology will catch up. So we don't have to worry on that. What we have to worry is, as I look at the elements within circular economy, then I go back to answer your question, Ashish, is in the environment, obviously, we know that land, water, raw material, fossil fuel, and obviously we go to the production and the trade and the consumption. So here I want to say that I want to focus my mind, and that again, we'll get a lot of grants, we'll get a lot of assistance if we focus on the human aspect. Now, human, right? So, and human relates to culture. And that for the last 20 years, the first thing I did after I left Cisco, me and my partner actually did a broad franchise from Dallas, and that's called change management. Humans don't like change. So regardless of where we move from one economy to the other, the issue is how do you handle change? How do you make sure that humans will like what they see, think outside the box, think without the box, and then they will fund. And I'm sure I agree with Mr. Jack. You are 67-year-old. Your question is about, well, the number of months and all that. You see, as a Muslim, again, I want to bring to that matter, this is a Ramadan month, we follow our Prophet. And we're supposed to live up to about 60, 63, 65, where if we put a role model of Prophet, and the 25% of the world population, and a lot of them are actually in ASEAN, Indonesia alone is about 280 million, we're supposed to like phase out from this life at the age of 63 if we follow Prophet Muhammad. So I'm at 65 now. So the question is, what do I do? What do I contribute as I live on Earth? So again, Jack, if we focus on the blue zone, we may be able to live up to 100, not on the wheelchair or on the bed. So what do we do with our time to contribute? I'm sure all of us here are able to contribute significantly, and if we focus ourselves. So back again, I just want to mention that I would like to focus my attention, apart from the grant and money, it will come naturally, Ashish, is the looking at the linear economy, the take, make, waste, to the be able to go to the circular economy. And this is economic of the natural resources. How do you manage that? So again, I think I noticed in one of the last 1 hour in the morning when I listened to, you don't have to throw away the computer, the whatever. You just have to add on some intelligence, and then they become a new product. I think that's one way that we can significantly address the recycle of computer products and everything, including in machines and all that. Just add on the intelligence to the old product, and it becomes new product. So we don't have to waste them too much. So we may not be able, we may extend the life of that particular equipment. Now, moving on, I think while I focus on the people side of it, hence, it comes to the human resource. Ideas, you have the right ideas, then you move on to actually solve the problem of these issues that you face in the circular economy. Ideas will also be related to the values. So that's the culture part, the human part of it. That's the toughest that we have to handle. It's easy to handle machines, things that we produce, but it's so difficult to get the people to actually look into and change the way that they actually live, the way that they do processes, the way that actually achieve things and utilize the resources. So huge, Ashish, we can take a couple of days to actually talk about culture and talk about change management. But I'm also on cybersecurity board. I'm on RHB board. There's a bank and insurance. I'm on a university board. So I'm a professional board member. That's what I spend my time with. So we are diving into the ESG, the environmental, social, and the governance of it. That's very crucial. But we create policy, and in other words, the human side of it. Actually, our biggest problem, if I look at what we're trying to embark on the journey, is the awareness of that 700 million population in ASEAN. Then how do they change their life? So what motivation they are looking at? Then I would like to end my just brief introduction into this is on AI. And AI is also related to the ethics in AI that relates to the human. I think the World Economic Forum recently, the biggest issue and they are grappling with are basically the AI stuff. And once you get a hand of it, once it can help human factor like us to change into embracing and adopting and improving on the circular economy, I think half of the battle is won. So innovation, research, development, commercialization, innovation is going to be key. And utilizing the AI to the fullest, I think that will be our key to be able to exponentially achieve what we set out for. I think we can go on and on. I just have to end with it. Human factor, you get more people enrolled, and the grants, the funding, the we call it the high value individual will put in their money into this journey. I'll stop at that. Thank you. I'll pass back to you, Ashish.
Shaifu, thank you so much for that. So value process, culture and change management, awareness, AI, ethics. I think it's a little too much to digest within a couple of minutes. So I will break that into something that you mentioned about recycling of devices. And I think at this stage, I want to bring in somebody who's a practitioner here. Resham, you are a true practitioner when it comes to distribution of devices, distribution of technology products, as well as an expert in cybersecurity. So the role of data, you know, when we talk about data and privacy in circular economy, what role does that play, and how does it have an economic impact, and how do you relate that back to ASEAN? So I know it's a little tough one, but I'm sure you can contribute to this discussion and as more from a practitioner's perspective.
Sure. Thanks, Ashish. Good morning, everyone. I'm Resham Gangani. I represent Certa Software in the Asia Pacific. And ironically enough, Certa Software actually, the founders come from the recycling business. So it's not the other way around where they set up a data erasure company and then gone to recycling. They actually came from recycling and renewed products and technology. So I think for a step back to answer your question, Ashish, we need to understand first what has happened in the last few years. I think Veera earlier mentioned that since 2018, and the last report said that sustainability has gone a step backwards in the last few years. And we have to look at why. I thought, you know, everyone thinks COVID saved the world. We stepped a lot. We saw animals come back. We saw trees being grown again. We saw people off the streets. But also COVID has also driven a digital growth that has never been seen before in the last few decades. In a matter of a year or two, people who never use handheld devices were using handheld devices because every solution to in the industry during COVID time was a digital solution. And this caused a lot of devices to be made, a lot of devices to be consumed, and most of these devices rely on storage, right? Whether it's a storage on your phone, a tablet, a machine, and all this storage. And to give perspective to how much difference and how much CO2 a storage produces, a normal modern high capacity 3.5-inch hard drive, which was used in data centers earlier, has an environmental footprint of about 2.5 kilos of CO2 emitted per terabyte per year. Now, with our drive for bigger, faster, better technology, you know, as Jack said, right, we always want to consume new things, better things, shinier things. And SSD, or flash memory, which is being used today in all devices or most devices in data center, you're talking about 160 kilos, 80 times more CO2 per terabyte emissions. And the reason behind this is because there's a lot of energy and water required to manufacture these storage devices. Now, if we took 80 times more and we're doing, bigger, better, faster, and Pak Shaifu mentioned about AI coming in, AI is using cloud computing, AI is using a lot of storage at the back end, and this will only increase, right? So the growth of stored data, at the end of the day, where we come from, or where the whole industry needs to look as far as computing or storage is concerned, the growth of stored data needs to be sustainable, right? And, you know, ASEAN has this circularity framework So if we put in we have a security framework that was announced in 2021. And part of it was to reduce the electronic waste and improve the data security in the face of rapid digitalization. So as far as the circular economy comes to data storage is concerned, the first thing is we are in a world where we have good technology. We don't have to throw them away. We have to extend, the whole circular economy concept is in the first place, prioritize the longest first use and extending the life of all these devices through repair. And as Pasha mentioned, health monitoring, the AI, the tools are there today to understand whether a device can be reused. We've gone into this whole leasing model so that it becomes OPEX versus CAPEX and stuff like that for organizations. But we're actually encouraging the fact that it contributes to waste, because after 3 years, the organization doesn't even look at extending the lease of it because, the device lease is over. I'm going to get a new shinier laptop for my people. Everyone gets new devices. And what happens to the old ones? So I think for the whole storage economy, whether, storage economy does not only talk about computers and servers and data centers. They are in your fridges today. They are in your, in your stoves, everything is smart, right? In your air conditioner, everything is smart today. And there's a lot of storage in that. So I think the future lies in how we can extend its use. And if everyone's, we have so many privacy laws and data protection laws, especially in ASEAN, right? We have the Indonesia law that's going to come to force. Malaysia just updated their law. We have the law in Thailand, Philippines, Singapore. So it's the data security framework, data privacy framework has come out for the region. In ASEAN now, almost every major economy has it. But where it's missing is actually putting sustainability as an impact there, where you can a process called data sanitization, where as long as it's certified that the data has been raised or sanitized, the device then can have a new lease of life without worrying about the privacy and security of it. So I think from a circular economy perspective, we have to look at how the industry and the governments can use the regulatory framework and the education framework, as everyone has spoken about, to extend the life of these devices, even if it's in a different owner's hand, so that we then bring up the less privileged of people who can use, who don't need a new shiny device that's the fastest technology today, but actually be operational ready, because at the end of the day, 80% of the work that we do on a phone or on a device is surfing, which can be used in the same 10-year technology 10 years ago. So at the end of the day, I think it's how we bring in the regulatory framework and also the encouragement to organizations to reuse devices. And we've seen this happen. Maybe later on in your future questions, I can highlight this. We've seen it happen in certain economies around the world as well, where we can use that as a framework to work. Yeah, that's it, Ashish, from me.
Resham, thank you so much for that. I think the points that you made on the carbon footprint generated by technology, by the storage devices, and especially that was amplified during the COVID period, and sustainability to be added in the regulatory framework within ASEAN and within the countries, I think is a very important point. At this stage, let me bring in Florian back again. Florian, I think to add on to what Resham has said, and also how can ESG principles be integrated into the business practices to support circular economy across ASEAN? I think that would be the next question for you. Thank you.
That is, I would say, a tricky part from an ASEAN perspective. So we've seen it from an EU perspective, that it happened now that there were multiple new regulations regarding value chains, agriculture value chains, deforestation, due diligence in value chains. There is a, let's say, big law or regulation on data protection, etc. And it all aims to protect consumers at one hand, but also to make value chains more transparent, to make it more traceable, to look also what the EU as probably the second biggest consumer market after China or the US is impacting with its consumption in the world, also here in the region. So we see there are multiple good examples in other regions in the world, and also here in ASEAN. The challenge I see here in ASEAN is, of course, again, that ASEAN is a mechanism of 10 member states without a decision-making agency like the EU Commission, for example. So here, of course, it is based on consensus, what kind of regulations are set up on a regional level, what kind of guidelines are set up on a regional level, and then it's up to the member states to impose these regulations and laws in their countries. So here, of course, you always need to see it's a highly a high level of different economic development, of different social development within the ASEAN member states. So of course, some might need a bit longer than others to implement specific regulations when it comes to ESG in value chains. I think the approaches that are there already, for example, when the European deforestation regulation came out, some member states here were extremely upset. This was also due to a, let's say, very bad communication from the EU side, not inviting everyone to a table and say, okay, this is what we're planning, how would you deal with it? So, of course, I think Indonesia, Malaysia were quite upset, saying like, okay, we have already certain regulations when it comes to palm oil, to other goods and commodities. Vietnam, on the other hand, was saying like, oh, we already have certain value chain regulations in place where we already look at not deforesting any more areas, so we only utilize these arable lands we already have. So these are different aspects of ESG to look into it. And then when it comes to due diligence, again, it's for now up to European enterprises to make sure that within their value chain, within their supply chain, that people adhere to certain social and further health standards and others. I think the big discussion came up when in Bangladesh a few years ago, this massive textile complex collapsed and a lot of people died, and it showed again the world, okay, what we do in our value chains is not sustainable. We try to have, this was textile, we try to have fast fashion, we produce more and more and more, we buy more and more and more. What was also already risen, we want new shiny things. We are not satisfied when we have a used phone that might be easily updated or upgraded, but we want the latest Apple or whatever. So to look here also with technology that is available into traceability systems and say like, look, if we can see that an object is produced in an environmental friendly, in a social friendly, in a governance incentive friendly way, then this should be awarded by companies that adhering to, and it should be awarded if private sector companies produce in a more social and sustainable way. But at the moment, it's still not there that a lot of governance policies try to reach that, but it's more awarding the policy itself rather than the company's approach. So when you look at let's say emission trading systems, it's more about the policy gets awarded rather than the company doing good. You can still, as a company, cut down forest in Germany, but then you say, oh, I bought forest in India and kind of equal it out. That's not how it should go. You should have an incentive to immediately produce more sustainable and not cut down somewhere and then plant somewhere else. So there a bit the balance of these value chain regulations are not very much practical and awarding to companies that work in a very sustainable way. And I think technology, especially when it comes to traceability, and I think that's why also a lot of companies, or we as people, are afraid of these changes, as I think all of us mentioned. Change also means that we might be more held responsible to our actions, what we do. So we cannot hide among a long value chain or anything. We cannot hide among multiple subcontractors. Also, governments cannot hide anymore, saying like, yeah, we put out this regulation on a regional level, but we are not responsible on what's done on the national level. So we all have to be held more responsible for what we are doing and what the actions are made. And I think traceability as one point is a good tool to improve this ESG frameworks within value chains, within policy regulations, and within regional and national implementation of these regulations.
Thank you, Florian. Jeffrey, at this stage, would you like to add some more to what Florian has said?
Yeah, if you look at the value chains, I think the other ways to attack or approach this is looking at the private sectors, actually, because we again face a lot with the private sectors and the challenges they have. In Yamada Consulting and Spires, one of the focus areas is we look at the logistics. So attacking these circular economies from the private sector side is looking at the reverse logistic. What is the role of logistic in the value chain? Leave it alone on the complexities and the long value chain within ASEAN, but it's how we actually change the way they do the business and operations by introducing reverse logistics. Reverse logistics can be applied to the manufacturers, distribution and retail in terms of returning empty packaging, the crates, the pallets. I think that's something that is practical and useful for the circular economy. And this needs to be actually help complement with the principle of the business from the brand principle. Aziz mentioned about the automotive industry, how many cars, mobile phones, and so on actually. In our day-to-day life, we already see when we are changing our car battery, there's already a trade-in policy. If you bring in your old car battery, replace with new ones, they value the old car batteries because the nickel part of inside the battery is very valuable actually. And that's the practical point of view actually. And it's commercially viable to do a reverse logistics on things that we already see on day-to-day car battery. But this actually can be increased to others product actually, especially products that consumer demand side need the service for reverse logistics. I'll give you a real example. Big furnitures. When you're changing your furnitures, you don't know how to dispose it actually. In Singapore, the city council will pick it up for you. But in most other countries in ASEAN, like in Indonesia, we don't know what to do with it actually. So if you are actually a furniture maker, a brand principal, introduce reverse logistic and options to do a trade-in, value the old furnitures, and that can be extended to many other things, bulk furnitures, household appliances. With that combined, the support of reverse logistic in the value chain and the brand principle adopting and allowing trade-in, then I think that's a win-win combination. I think this is very easily applicable. But one of the catch is actually it's costly. To do a reverse logistic, it's costs to the manufacturing principle to do that, and also to the logistic players to pick it up. They only do deliver, but they don't pick up waste good actually. So to address that challenge, it's we need at the beginning of the stage is the incentive to the manufacturers to do and start doing a reverse logistic, doing a trade-in, and also incentive to the logistics service providers to invest more on the technologies enabler, as well as any infrastructure needed by the logistics service providers to do more reverse logistics in each countries. I think that's our view, Ashish.
So Jeff, a question that I had for you was, how can this be imbibed in the ASEAN framework for circular economy? I mean, what you've said today makes a lot of sense, but within that framework, how do we sort of imbibe this in so that it becomes a part of that framework?
Within ASEAN context, like Florian mentioned, sometimes you can need to look at the not just national level, but also regional. In regional levels, I think there's a lot of one-way flow of trade, whether it's containers, shipping routes. And the return trips, for example, Singapore, Indonesia, it's a very heavy traffic flow of containers and commodities good cross borders. But the returns flow from, for example, Indonesia to Singapore. Yes, some will go to export to Singapore, but it can be used for some of the business that needs bilateral or ASEANs to play a role actually, to utilize the empty vessel going back one way. And that's also a low carbon emissions and the use of reduction of the CO2 actually. Logistics is one of the largest contributors in terms of the emissions. And I think that's play important roles on that actually. So think a way that perhaps if Singapore play a role on some of the waste management and recycle, and in some ASEAN countries do not have that, for example, Indonesia and Singapore, make use the reverse logistics, return logistics to play a role and supports within a few ASEAN countries who already has that facility, infrastructure, supporting each other actually to do that. Just.
Thanks, Jeff. At this stage, I want to bring in Pak Veera. Pak Veera, what role can international collaboration play in advancing circular economy strategies in ASEAN? So what's your take on this?
Okay. I think we need to learn from the global practices that particularly from Europe, yeah, like from, for example, from German that they have more advanced. And also I think like last time I visited with the circular economy in Denmark, and they mentioned that they implemented the circular economy initiatives since like more than 50 years ago. And I think the like countries in ASEAN, particularly also in Indonesia, circular economy is relatively still low. So I think first we need to learn from the international good practices that already like work at on the ground, in particular in bringing the benefit to the people, social aspect, and also for the economy, and of course for the environment. And for example, like Indonesia, yeah, the government has conducted study on the potential benefit of social, economic, and environmental of the circular economy in Indonesia. And the study like provided the promising figures, yeah, like for example the financial value of circular economy adoption in Indonesia until 2030 reached 588 trillion rupiah, or around how much is it, like 43 something billion US dollar. But I think the challenge on the ground is like including from businesses, yeah. It's like I see it's like no many scale up project or project, yeah, or initiative on the ground related to circular economy. So probably from the international collaboration, we also like I think GIZ support for the ASEAN, aside from the practices that already done, the lesson learned, but also the technology and probably also the policy. Yeah? Like for example, like I think some countries have good implementation of like EPR, extended producer responsibility. But I think some countries, and I think also I reflect on ASEAN, the implementation is like not robust, so that also the impact on the ground also not so big. So I mean, we expect probably also aside technology and also probably financing as well, yeah. I think business transformation or adoption to circular economy requires big investment as well. And I think financing also the barriers that why I see, I reflect that adoption of circular economy in ASEAN also relatively not so high. I think that's it first. Thank you.
Thank you, Pak Veera. Okay, at this stage, I will throw a question at everybody. How can we decouple economic growth with consumption and disposal of finite resources? And I'd like to ask Jack to come in first with his comments on this, and then all the other participants can come in and give their comments on this. Thanks.
Thanks. I think that if we were to make ostentatious consumption anti-social image, that means if you keep on splashing and throwing away things and showing off, you actually are not admired, appreciated, or even being envied upon. In fact, you are seen as a very antisocial person who actually is not kind, and it's pollutive and you're a bad person. So once we're able to create this negative image of people who keep on buying and throwing, then suddenly the peer pressure will change everything. And then if you recognize people who actually care about the environment, care about poverty, care about equity, distribution of wealth, then the recognition of these people will make them motivated to move in that direction. I believe if we change the way we recognize people, the behavior will change. Today, we recognize people when they say, you know, Louis Vuitton says, you can't afford me, you're so bloody poor. Prove to me that you can give me all your money, then I will say you are recognized. Then you say, yeah, I will give you all my money so that I will be recognized. That's really stupid. You get tricked by all this branded stuff, which you actually don't need. Like the diamond watch, you don't need it. So what we have to start to understand is to teach people to say a decent life is one that you are comfortable, that you have ability to say, I have enough, I don't need to buy any more stuff. I've bought a phone and I use it for 4 years instead of 2 years. I don't need, I have a computer, my laptop, Apple, I use it for 13 years, it works. And I don't need a new one. So if you go for long-lasting, durable product, maybe you pay a little bit more, but it lasts very long. Don't go for fast fashion that you throw away. And if you drink water, just drink from a water bottle rather than a bottled water. I think those behavior, once they become anti-social in image, things start to change. We have to go by fashion, make it fashionable to be a long, durable, go for durable things. We used to repair our shoes. Nowadays, we throw away. We used to use refills or fountain pen and all that thing. So if we are very conscious about that and we recognize people, I think it will work. Thank you very much. I'm leaving in half an hour. Yeah, thank you.
Jack, thank you so much for that. Ostentatious consumption behavior, make it antisocial. Well, what are your thoughts about this, Shaifu? Would you like to come in and add to this?
Yeah, sure. Thanks. I've been listening attentively. But my mind goes to, with that 700 million, I think we have to focus on not solely individual. We have to focus on, this is trade economy. So the companies, whether it's MSME, micro enterprises, or small medium enterprise, or the large one, are more intelligent that they can actually become a good corporate citizen with the CSR. So first and foremost, the target group, Ashish, in your journey. Secondly, I think bringing in mind as an example, blockchain obviously is going to be crucial if you can do that traceability in the logistic in many aspects to make sure that we're doing the right thing on sustainability. Then the certification is free online, so we can certify people who has achieved to a certain level of sustainability and adhere to circular economy. Then of course, money matters, right? The crypto world are being accepted by many of our ASEAN members. So that's one way that I think that we can look at it seriously as we move forward, the initiative and the program that you want to look at. Now, lastly, the second part is the question, is it the government? Is it the private sector? Or is it the NGO? Or perhaps it's a hybrid. I've been helping out the government in some council, especially the Malaysian Productivity Council. Productivity is a key thing. Company will reduce, lower their costs if they think it's more productive and more profitable by increasing their revenue, but in reducing it. So regulatory framework in aspect of government agency, what they have done, even for more than 10 years, they are looking at project. Take, for instance, example, if a particular company needs to renew their license yearly. Imagine they allow them to have the license to renew it once in 5 years. That's productivity. That's making it ease for them to do business. And there are many other examples. So, and lastly, with that MPC, I've been involved also the last 10 years. They call it the Nexus Project. It's a collaboration with government, through the government agency, and private sector. And they give some budget, of course. So they have identified 14 industry, be it professional services, chemical, manufacturing, and you have it, logistic, F&B. And this is one way for us to actually create awareness of circular economy, create the awareness and reach out to them to make sure that they are measured in relation to productivity. And I think that will be more concrete. You can measure the numbers. You can give a carrot or stick, incentivize, or you actually, through government policy, enforce it. So I hear just now that ASEAN perspective, you don't have a commissioner to decide and go across ASEAN. So you have to do a lot more awareness and advocacy in this aspect. Back to you, Ashish.
Thank you, Shaifu. Interesting. So we started off with ostentatious consumption for individuals. Then we moved on to SMEs and in the journey. And we spoke about regulatory framework. So naming and shaming organizations that don't adhere to proper consumption patterns. Yeah. Well, interesting. Can I bring in Resham at this stage? Resham, your comments on this, please.
Thanks, Ashish. I think a lot has been said, and just to summarize everyone's point of view, I think I put it all together. I think it's no one single effort. We have I think it starts with regulatory framework, because people only move when something is a law or compliance, unfortunately. And if we push organizations and governments to look at the whole aspect of sustainable and ethical recycling, reuse, right? As mentioned, Jeffrey mentioned the furniture part, right? What do I do with my furniture that's old? What do I do with my chairs that I own? I don't need them. What do I do next? I think nobody knows. And if there's or a process where if you are manufacturing new chairs or if you are manufacturing new PCs, you need to take some responsibility for the waste you created previously. I think frameworks like that will help people use things longer, will help things being repaired for reuse as well. And it also brings in economic benefits, because we then can use all these reused equipment, all these reused items and waste that can recycle. We can bring in a whole new generation who probably in ASEAN, not every country has a rich citizens or citizens who can buy new things. We can bring on digital inclusion, bring people out of poverty, provide more houses, shades, as part of this whole recycling and CSR project for the entire economy. I was mentioning earlier, for example, the government can play a big role by encouraging the use of refurbished or renewed items, whether it's furniture, whether it's materials, raw materials. In France, for example, they have a digital roadmap, and beginning this year, every government institution has to buy anything new they buy in technology. 20% of it has to be renewed or refurbished, right? So these are the kind of ideas and frameworks that can be brought forward, where not only the governments and the bigger organizations take the lead on how to do it, but it also, like Jackson says, right, if we make it more fashionable to be an organization that reuses stuff, and instead of name and shame, let's name the guys, name the organizations who are leading the way, and it becomes a natural practice after 5-10 years from now to use 30% or 40% recyclables in an organization, whether it's a table, chair, a PC, or even small things like water dispensers, for example. So we produce less waste eventually. So I think it's all a matter of bring the whole ecosystem together, make it available to the industry, and making the guys who manufacture new things be part of the process of taking care of the older things and giving them a new lease of life.
Thank you, Resham. I want to bring in Florian at this stage. So Florian, ethical recycling, framework for reuse. Now, would you like to add some of your comments onto what Resham has said?
Yeah, this, but also what the round in general said before. I think it summarized a lot of topics we already tapped up on. I wanted to start also regarding furniture. I think furniture industry is a huge contributor to waste, and often we go somewhere, especially as expats, you go somewhere, you buy new furniture, you leave after 2, 3, 4 years, and then what happens? And I think recently was I'm not sure if it was a startup in Germany or another European state, they renting furniture, especially focusing on expats that are only for a short time in a certain country, in a certain city. So you can rent it, you basically lease it like a car. You sign a contract that if there's any purposely put on damage, then you have to pay for it. But if it's just used for 2, 3 years, then they take it on again, kind of clean it, renew it a bit, but renting it out then to the next person. And they also work with another startup, I think that was in Denmark, that is now focusing on utilizing plastic from the oceans and other waste materials to come up with new materials to build these kind of furnitures that last long, but are using recycled materials specifically. It's at the moment still something for people that can afford higher prices for this. So I think that's also an issue in that sector, recycling and building with new materials. Often the technology is quite new and needs a lot of funding. So the price is higher for these, let's say, sustainably produced products. So here I think we also in the long run have to see how can we contribute to making these reused, recycled materials available for the broad public, also if you don't have too much money to afford it. The other thing is bringing stakeholders together and not doing the name and shame game, but naming the ones that doing good. Here I just wanted to bring in one platform that we with GIZ or with partners together built up here in ASEAN. It's called ASEAN Access, where we specifically include MSMEs in the region to matchmaking events, to training events, to learning events, to exchange among each other, but also including beyond ASEAN to bring in companies from abroad. And here, I think, is a good opportunity to always highlight specific companies here in the region, but also beyond, to bring in good examples and showing companies that have ESG components in their value chain, that recycle, reuse, that bring up good practices and can present this to further private sector partners or also then government partners, so that this also gives incentives to policies to say like, okay, we reward these companies that do good, so to speak, or work sustainably. And the third part then, the regulatory frameworks. I think there's recently a very good example from Vietnam with regard to consumer protection, data protection, that they are one of the first countries, I think, now also dealing specifically with false news or fake news and social media, how to handle this constant intake, especially among young people on Instagram, on TikTok, on other platforms, where people often show a shiny life. I have a new thing here, I have a new thing there, I do this, I do that, I consume, I have a lot of money. So to reduce these kind of harmful impacts, but then also fake news on certain topics, and with these kind of consumer protection regulations and laws, you of course can also try to support behavioral changes and also again award consumers and people that are going more in a sustainable direction, consume sustainably and reuse recycled or repaired products. So this just as an add-on to what was said here in the round.
Florian, thank you for sharing the ASEAN Access and also the consumer and data protection framework that Vietnam has. In fact, one of the things that comes out of it is that if Vietnam can do it, can't the other economies across ASEAN do it? And can we amongst ourselves create a framework where we can take this to the other economies and help them create it? So I think that's one takeaway, that's very important takeaway. I want to bring in Pak Veera at this stage. Pak Veera, your comments on what has been said so far. And after that, I would like Pak Sachin to come in with his closing remarks. Thank you.
Okay, probably I would like to emphasize on the role of consumers, in particular, also including the young people. I think Sachin, mentioned about the young people that, in particular, how to increase demand for like circularity product. so that the production, the product from circularity can be also consumed by our community, our people. So probably we need to including also the policy support to ensure that the demand for this circularity product increase. Yeah, I mean, like for example, like there is a research from, I think, from the WWF Indonesia, that there is a demand for sustainable product, yeah, including like palm oil. What is like sustainable palm oil, or palm oil with RSPO, for example, yeah. The consumers mentioned that they prefer to buy the sustainable product, yeah. But when they go to the like supermarket, they don't find that kind of product. So probably also in particular to address the low adoption of circular economy at global level, also I think in ASEAN as well, we need to to strengthen the demand from the consumers, in particular for the circularity products, and then we ensure that the product are there, yeah, so that people can buy as well. I think that is the role of, I mean, the role of consumption. Yeah, I think SDG 12 is related not only production but also consumption. So if recycle business, for example, produce some things and there is no demand, and then I think there will be a problem and no impact to the with people and environment as well. Yeah.
Thank you, Pak Veera. Can I now request Pak Sachin to come in with his closing remarks?
Thank you, Ashish. And first of all, I must really thank all the participants, the panelists, and for the conversation that we had today. It was very enlightening, and I looked at how I personally understood circular economy issues, and I think I have definitely learned a lot today. I would just like to close on one aspect that struck me while listening to all of you. Is I think, COVID taught us a lot of things. Being stuck in a lockdown situation and being restricted to your immediate surroundings for all the things that you need, food, healthcare, medical, etc., was a wake-up call to this whole phenomenon of globalization, where we suddenly saw that there was a narrative for deglobalization, because you're looking at having circular economy ideas being implemented at a local level. So what struck me is that we have two types of concepts that we are pushing. The one is a one shoe fits all. It's relevant to the whole world. So those ideas need to be implemented because it's relevant to everyone. But then there are some issues of circular economy which are relevant only to a local area. For example, the issues of Singapore are very different from the issues of Indonesia. In Indonesia, waste management is, I think, one of our #1 concerns because of the huge amount of waste and the inability to process the waste and recycle it. That problem definitely is not Singapore's problem, or even Malaysia, for the example, where they have an infrastructure to deal with it. And like this, there are many other concepts that we have to approach it differently. So the customized solutions in circular economy will be looked at in a different way in each different part of ASEAN. We say ASEAN as one word, but we must recognize it is 10 different countries, and there are different stages of development. So certain aspects of circular economy must be implemented different ways for the different countries. And one idea that you should think about is that if you apply a certain concept globally versus nationally at the country's level, and then you go down to provincially or regionally, then you go to a city, and it actually goes down to a village. So if you really look at how the country is built up, the villages make up the nation, right? And the number of villages and what is the ecosystem that a village has from a circular economy concept or an aspect, that will tell us a lot, reveal us a lot that actually there's opportunity for job creation here. So implementing circular economy may be creating jobs, because there is a lot of ideas and a lot of technologies, a lot of things that can be implemented that will keep people busy at a local level.
And there's nothing that stops us from going down to the village level in order to create a local ecosystem. That is actually the whole process we know as, is hyper localization. So many of the ideas that we look at, when you go hyper local, you start seeing it in a different way. So I think this is a food for thought for all of us, that some of the ideas that we're implementing, we may be looking at different ways to implement it across ASEAN. And we should really consider ASEAN to be 10 countries and therefore look at solutions which may be grouped in 3 or 4 different categories. I mean, there may be 3 or 4 countries that may be relevant to one particular idea. And another, there's a middle tier of countries which have a different way of implementation. And then, of course, the more developed parts of ASEAN will look at it differently. So that's the takeaway I got. And with the idea of how can some of these ideas be implemented with an actionable way so that it results in an outcome, and people who are maybe participating in this forum or outside, when they go to the outreach and when people start to see what was discussed here today, they should be able to get some ideas that they can implement. With that, thank you very much, and I'll give it back to Ashish.
Thank you, Pak Sachin. I think we've reached our time limit for today. So I want to take this opportunity to thank everybody for joining us today. We will be coming up with the outcomes of this discussion, and they will be made available on YouTube, on our YouTube channel, and on our website. And as I always say, the discussion has started. The discussion will continue beyond this room. We will get back here in a couple of months again to take this discussion forward with more stakeholders. So thank you once again, and looking forward to being in touch with you, all of you. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.